Good afternoon. Welcome to the Harris County Republican Party's Tele-Town Hall this afternoon during early voting in 2018. I am Paul Simpson, Harris County Republican Party Chair, and I'm very happy to be here today with Congressman John Culberson and our congressional candidate Dan Crenshaw, both, of course, who are on the ballot in this critical midterm election this year. Folks, we're calling voters across Harris County for this Tele-Town Hall. Appreciate you joining us. You've got an opportunity to ask questions of any of us here about the election. If you want, those are on the line and want to ask a question, can simply press *3 on your phone. Hopefully, you don't have a rotary dial phone, and you've got a punch phone. So just press *3 anytime you want to ask a question, and they'll send it on in here. We're also on Facebook Live this afternoon, which is another opportunity, obviously, to talk with voters, and you can see us here and send in the questions, I believe, through online through Facebook Live. So, again, this is Paul Simpson, Harris County Republican Party Chair. If you've got any questions, press *3. We're here on the beginning of the second week of early voting in this huge election. Yeah, I think everybody knows turnout this year is at probably some kind of all-time record high for a midterm election. It's pretty amazing. And I think our Republicans are very fired up to come out this year, and they are. We see that across Harris County, and we want to make sure everybody gets out to vote and knows critically from the party standpoint, votes all the way down the ballot. You can vote straight ticket Republican, which is, of course, the most energy efficient way to vote, or you can vote all the way down the ballot. Be sure to vote for all of our Republican judges. We've got 75 judges on the ballot this year, but they're the overwhelming support, the overwhelming favored candidates to be judges here, supported by law enforcement and a lot of other groups. So we'll talk about that some more. So again, we're looking forward to this Tele-Town Hall, and I'd like to now ask our guests here to say a few words. First, Congressman Culberson, John Culberson.
Paul, thank you for hosting this. Telephone town hall meetings are a great way to communicate with people, and this is a great way to reach a lot of people in a very short period of time. And we do have a short window, folks. This is probably one of the most important elections we'll ever have. The District 7 and District 23 in Dallas are at the center of the bullseye. If we will decide here in Harris County whether or not Nancy Pelosi is Speaker, heaven forbid District 7 goes Democrat. We just can't let that happen. Right. If District 7 goes Democrat, not only is Nancy Pelosi likely to be Speaker, but Maxine Waters would be the chairperson in charge of regulating the United States financial and banking system. And we're going to win this race. We are firing on all cylinders. We just need people to turn out and vote. Every Republican needs to get their friends, their neighbors, everyone they know to turn out and vote Republican up and down the ballot. And remember, not voting is the same as voting for the Democrat. That's critical. We've got to turn out every Republican. So that's the focus of our work right now is grassroots, get out the vote. And I am just honored. And, next to being a father and a husband, the greatest joy in my life is being the representative for District 7. I'm the right person in the right place at the right time, and I've proven that by delivering the largest hurricane recovery package in the history of the country, enough money to finish every federally authorized flood control project in Harris County at full federal expense. And so got a great story to tell, Paul, and we're glad to answer questions this afternoon in this telephone town hall.
Great, Congressman. We're obviously proud to have you as our Congressman representing Congressional District 7, which is entirely within Harris County. And so it's very important to Harris County as well that Congressman Culberson be reelected by a significant margin. Also entirely within Harris County is my congressional district as well, Congressional District 2, which has been represented by Congressman Ted Poe for quite some years, and Congressman Poe is retiring now. And so we have, after a spirited primary, we have a wonderful candidate, clearly going to succeed Congressman Poe, and that is Dan Crenshaw, who's here with us as well. So Dan could say a few words about his race in addition. Dan?
Yeah, thanks, Paul. It's an honor to be the Republican nominee for the 2nd District. It's got a proud history with Ted Poe, and those are big boots to fill, as I am often reminded, and rightfully so. We've just had a wonderful year campaigning. It's honestly, it's hard to imagine that a year ago, we just started. Well, geez, just under a year ago, and we had a hard-fought primary. Everybody told us that we couldn't win, but we worked hard and we connected with voters, and we proved that the American dream is possible. Because I tell you what, in this country, it still is, and now more than ever. I mean, look at where the economy is going. And now we're in the general. We're almost to the finish line. November 6th is right around the corner. So, I can only stand here and humbly ask for your support. Get out and vote. Vote for these principles of limited government and individual freedom and states' rights, and vote for men like John Culberson, who have done so much to help our the Harris County with after flooding, and like you said, get that massive spending bill in place for flooding infrastructure, which we need so badly, and which you are unfairly attacked on, as I've noticed as well. And that's the big thing I'm noticing, right, between what the Democrats are proposing and what Republicans are proposing. Democrats are a party of no; they're a party of resistance without any coherent governing philosophy behind that.
That's
Republicans stand for something, right? We stand for sustainable government. We stand for responsible government. We stand for this idea that when we look at a policy question, do we have less freedom or more freedom? And that's the essential question. That's what people should be asking themselves when they go to the polls. And vote for those judges. Man, they are highly qualified, great people. We need good people on the bench in Harris County.
Thank you so much, Dan. And again, everything you said, I totally agree with you. I think the Republicans are the clear choice in all branches of government, not just, obviously, y'all are here as a federal legislative branch. We have the governor up for re-election, as along with the lieutenant governor, a very strong ticket all the way down for our state government. Greg Abbott, Dan Patrick, and all the others here. County government, County Judge Ed Emmett up for re-election. And they really, and we can't forget Senator Cruz, obviously at the top of the ticket. And he's got some guy from an Irish guy from El Paso, I think, running against him, named O'Rourke. But I think that we've seen that Senator Cruz also is a strong representative for Texas values, whereas his opponent really would be great representing people in California. But getting back to the early voting, just a little practical questions. Again, practical information. If you have any questions for me, Paul Simpson, County Chair, or Congressman John Culberson, or candidate Dan Crenshaw, press *3 on your phone and ask your questions. And we'll get started here in just a second. And a reminder, we're in early voting. The last week of early voting this week, it's 7 to 7 every day this week till Friday. There are 46 locations around Harris County where you can early vote. Go to harriscountygop.com. We have a link to where all the locations are. And as well, we're on Facebook Live. So let me move on then to one of our first questions, I believe is a caller who has a question for Congressman Culberson. See if we can get him on the line. I think it's Richard.
Hello, Richard. Can you hear us? Yeah, there you go. There you go.
Okay, is Richard on the line? Hello? Well, I guess we...
Can you summarize the question?
I think the question here from Richard, as I understand it, is from Congressman Culberson. The caller's hearing a lot of disturbing ads that he believes are distorted about your record, I'm sure. So can you clarify that?
Absolutely. Unfortunately, my opponent has so little to offer that the Democrats are literally just making things up. They just have, unfortunately, Dan, as you'll discover, they have a pattern of making things up. As they say in the Geico ad, that's just what they do. They've said I didn't do enough for flooding over the years, which is absurd. One of my problems, Paul, is that I believe very sincerely in Ronald Reagan's motto. He had a little sign on his desk that said there's no limit to what you can do or how far you can go if you don't mind who gets the credit. So I tend to do things very quietly, particularly on the Appropriations Committee. So after Tropical Storm Allison hit Houston, for example, when the medical center flooded so badly, I very quietly went about the business of helping them recover. The basements had flooded. Memorial Hermann Hospital had 38 feet of water after only 11 inches of rain, and I got them the money to harden the basements of the medical center, install submarine doors to protect against flooding, move all the utilities and the labs out, and as a result, when Harvey hit the medical center with 41 inches of rain, Memorial Hermann only had wet carpets. So I've been there to deliver for the Harris County Flood Control District, for the Port of Houston, for our airport system, for our infrastructure. And District 7 voters know they can rely on me to keep my word, to represent them as a free market fiscal conservative. And Democrats have so little to offer that all they can do is make it up. And it's for example, they're running an ad claiming that I've put money into a telescope in Chile instead of in flood control, which is absurd because it's illegal to take money from the National Science Foundation and use it for flood control. You can only use National Science Foundation money for National Science
they're
Foundation
obviously desperate
project. It's just desperate.
Yeah,
it's absurd. And another one that I voted against some bill that had something to do to send money to Barker and Annex Dam.
Yeah.
The bill explicitly excluded addicts in Barker Dam. So they just make it up. Like the Geico ad said, unfortunately, that's what Democrats do. So we're counting on the good sense of District 7 voters to remember what they know about John Culberson, that they can trust me to keep my word to represent them honorably and consistently as a free market conservative, and I'd be proud to earn their vote again this November.
Thank you, Congressman. And again, as Paul Simpson, County Chair, reminding you, callers on the Tele-Town Hall, if you've got questions, press star 3. And you can talk to somebody with your bring up your question, and we can get to it. And again, with me here today is Congressman John Culberson and candidate Dan Crenshaw, running to succeed Ted Poe in Congress. Let me make a point too. Again, early voting is on this week, 7 to 7 every day, 46 locations around Harris County, and this is your chance to elect our judges in Harris County. And this is something that I think a lot of voters don't pay. Oftentimes it's like an afterthought. Oh, yeah, I've got to vote for the judges. But the third branch of government is critically important, as I think we saw in the Kavanaugh hearings, how critically important the judicial branch is. And in Harris County, with the longest ballot in the country, we have 75 judges on the ballot this year. It's hard to know them all. So, of course, the easy thing to do is pull straight ticket Republican. But even if you want to go through each judges, we can tell you by far that the Republican judicial candidates are more qualified, more capable than their opponents. For instance, the Houston police this year were warned of a revolving door of criminal justice that's happened when a Democrat judge allowed a sex trafficker back on the street multiple times. So as a result, law enforcement groups such as the Houston Police Officers Union and the Fraternal Order of Police in Harris County and the Harris County Deputies Organization have overwhelmingly endorsed Republican judicial candidates for office, as well as all of our constables. The Republican constables have as well.
95%.
95% by the Houston Police Officers Union, 98% of the candidates endorsed by the Fraternal Order of Police are Republican, and 100% of those endorsed by the Deputies Organization are Republican.
Police don't like repeat customers.
That's right.
And they know Republicans are going to make sure these guys are off the street.
That's right. And the folks that have to enforce the laws on the street, the deputies and the police, understand what it takes, and they understand that it's Republican judges administer justice and enforce the rule of law. That's why it's so important. And I'm happy to say that Dan Crenshaw has been very helpful and supportive of our judges, and maybe you want to talk a little bit about that as well, Dan, about our Republican judges.
Well, I don't know if there's anything else to add, Paul. I mean, like you said, they follow the rule of law. They're fair-minded. They're qualified. I'll add a little bit to the qualifications. And when I speak with these judges that I've been trying to help campaign, the number of years they've been involved in the system and understand the law is really incredible. I mean, they're truly qualified. They're truly fair-minded. This isn't about them promoting their value system either. This is them having the ability to interpret the law correctly. And I would also point out that when you're looking at a court, like a civil court, or whether it's a criminal court, a family court, a civil court, I mean, these things truly affect your life. This is business disputes. This is family disputes. These are things that can really affect your life, and you want somebody on the bench who truly understands the law. We have compassionate people running. They understand the law, and they're highly qualified to be on the bench. And I really hope everyone will get out the vote for them.
Well, I appreciate all the things you're doing to support our judges, too, as well, Dan, and they appreciate it as well. I think it shows the Republicans, we do have a consistent philosophy, we work together, and we have a good team. Now, we do have a question, again, callers on the town hall. If you have a question for me, Paul Simpson, County Chair, John Culberson, or Dan Crenshaw, press star 3 with your question, and we have a caller that we can bring up, and that is Sandy. I believe may have a question for both of our candidates, I believe, regarding immigration. Is Sandy on the line?
Yes, I am.
Go ahead with your question. Thanks, Sandy.
I am a recently retired educator in Klein ISD, and I'm concerned about the caravan of immigrants that are coming our way. I, of course, want to welcome people that are really looking for a better life, but I want them treated in a humane way. However, I really feel like we need something innovative, a way to approach the massive numbers that are coming. And I want to know what we can do, what kind of a think tank do we need to really make this work for Texas?
I'll go ahead and take it since she's in my district in Klein, or at least maybe she is. We share such a border there. You're absolutely right. Listen, to put the simple answer is we cannot let what is estimated 10,000 people in a caravan across the border. We cannot let that happen. The president is right to demand that we enforce the laws and keep our borders secure. You might be interested. I wrote an op-ed in National Review about this some time ago about the need to work with Mexico on these issues. The newly elected Mexican president made a big point of wanting to secure the Mexican southern border. That's a way that we can work together with the Mexican government to stop this, because it really does need to happen on their side of the border. We have major problems. Even if we apprehend every single one of them on our side of the border, that's a highly unsustainable situation for our court system, for our education system. How do we actually process all of these people? You have to stop them before they cross the border, and that's why border security is so important. That's why it's such a primary part of my campaign. Whether it's a wall where that makes sense, or whether it's other measures where that makes sense, just according to our geography. Texas has been fronting the bill on this for many years, spending almost $1 billion a year, putting extra DPS agents on the border, getting extra patrols. We need more of that, but it needs to be federally funded. Texans shouldn't be fronting the bill for the entire country.
And I'd also add, it's just important that anyone wanting to come to the United States illegally know that it is not going to work. We need to make this is a law enforcement issue first and foremost. Border security is a matter of public safety for the people of the United States, to keep our streets safe and secure from gang members and drug dealers and gun runners and human smugglers and traffickers. And the caravan absolutely cannot be permitted to cross any of the United States. Our borders must be made secure by the good men and women in Border Patrol. I chair the subcommittee that funds the Department of Justice, and I made sure I've sent enough money to hire new judges, new prosecutors, new U.S. attorneys, new marshals, additional bed space. This is a law enforcement issue first and foremost. And as the caller said, Sandy, you're exactly right. We welcome anybody and everybody that wants to come to the country legally to become a good citizen, to learn the language and a productive member of society. That's what made America great, but we are a nation of laws, and those laws have got to be enforced.
Absolutely, and I appreciate both of y'all. I think that's a consistent position we have, and you have to wonder, too, how did this – who's supporting this caravan or whatever you want to call this, thousands of people heading north, and they've been offered that I think they could stay in Mexico, but they don't want to go there. They're just coming here. So what's the purpose of it is, I think it's largely unfair to a lot of them probably, and we don't know who's there even. So it's not something we clearly need to take seriously and enforce our border, and I think we all agree on that. But again, you're talking about enforcing the laws. That's what Republican judges do, particularly even in the civil arena. You mentioned the need for enforcement of our immigration laws. I think that's what the administration's doing that, the state's doing that. We're going to make sure that we can enforce those laws, and that we have the right judges in place to do that. Again, callers, if you have a question for me, the Paul Simpson County Chair, Congressman John Culberson, or candidate Dan Crenshaw, press *3 on your phone, and hopefully we can get to your question. And I've got a question now coming up, I believe, on health care, Congressman. Can we go to that call? I believe Richard has a question. There you go.
Eric, can hear you, Richard.
Go ahead with your question.
Yes. Congressman Culberson, Lizzie is probably distorting the facts about your positions on health care, and I think the public needs to have the real story as to how badly she is distorting the truth. Can you give the public a brief summary of what she's saying and what's wrong with it? I already know because I've read some of it, but I don't think enough people realize how badly this is affecting, the results.
Richard, thank you for the question, because it is unfortunate that my opponent has so little to offer that she's simply fabricating things about my position on health care. I have always supported protecting people with pre-existing conditions. I've co-authored legislation, the Pre-Existing Condition Protection Act, to make sure that insurance companies cannot discriminate against people with pre-existing conditions. We have voted about 69 times to repeal and replace Obamacare, and we have, as free market conservatives, have a alternative plan that's designed to make insurance affordable, portable, accessible. That the alternative that we proposed not only would protect people with pre-existing conditions, but we also made sure that young people could stay on their parents' insurance up until age 26. My opponent is also fabricating a story that I've, for example, supported legislation to drive up the cost of prescription drugs, and the Democrats just make it up. That's what they do. And for example, I'm one of the Republicans in Congress that supports what's called reimportation, to allow consumers to buy their prescription drugs from overseas online, from Canada, for example. That will reduce free market competition. Always reduces the cost of any product. So as a free market fiscal conservative, I strongly support empowering consumers to make those decisions on where to buy their prescription drugs, to keep the government out of the patient-doctor relationship, and to ensure that, for example, under our alternative, that small businesses could pool together to negotiate better rates from insurance companies, just as though they were a big employer. Our Republican alternative is designed to ensure that people have choices, that they can buy the insurance policy that fits their need. If they can only afford a Volkswagen, that's fine. If they want to buy a plan with all the bells and whistles, that's fine too. But let's get the government out of it. And Richard, I thank you for the question, because the Democrats just make it up.
Absolutely, consistently do that.
They just make it up.
And remind the callers, if you have any questions on a Tele-Town Hall for Congressman John Culberson or Dan Crenshaw, press *3 on your phone. And maybe, Dan, I think you've had some of those issues as well of your record being misrepresented regarding health care. What do you have to comment on that?
Right. Similarly, yes. My opponent isn't as well funded from California as yours is, but but he's saying the exact same things on commercials, that we don't support protection for pre-existing conditions, and it's not true. I've actually long said this is one area of healthcare where Republicans and Democrats largely agree.
It's true.
And that's why it's so important to get the good ideas from both sides. The problem is the way they approach the overall solution is pretty much unsustainable. But we need to protect people with pre-existing conditions. I've said that. My opponent knows I said that. All you have to do is check my Twitter account and how much I've advocated for this. And 2 weeks later, he had an ad out saying that I didn't support it. And it's just really unfortunate, because he can't turn around and say, well, this is what we support, this is why it's better, and make an argument for it. They don't know how to do that. And so they just they attack. Yeah, they make it up, and they try to tell everyone what we believe instead of trying to tell people what they believe. Right, and that's just an unfortunate reality of politics.
That's a great way to express it,
Yeah.
Dan.
Yeah,
Democrats spend all their time trying to tell people instead of what they believe,
Right.
trying to they just make it up.
Well, and you see this year particularly, their far left wing has taken over their party,
Yeah.
and is driven by this kind of derangement syndrome, and when the local party calls itself the Resistance, there's something wrong there. Rather than offering constructive solutions, they just want to tear down, and you can imagine where we'd be if the Congress were to go. We'd be taken over by the Democrat Party for the next cycle. We'd spend 2 years doing nothing but impeachment hearings, which would just be an incredible waste of time. Just nonsense.
And the crazy ideas we see, Democrat amendments offered in the House, for example, right before we broke to come home for the break, they actually offered an amendment. The Democrats had an amendment that said you could not transport oil in any pipeline that used eminent domain to be built. That's all of them. So Democrats would shut down all oil transportation in the United States.
Which is the ultimate goal.
These guys, they're done. It's nuts.
That's wow. I mean, the second, third order effects of that particular policy by itself, and also how bad that is for the environment. What they don't realize is that pipelines are the most environmentally friendly way of transporting oil and gas. But
Exactly.
God forbid we use facts to make our positions bold.
Well, I'll remind the callers, *3 if you have a question. And I think we have one for Congressman Culberson from Ann Lee concerning, I think, some issues that have been raised in the campaign. Is Ann on the phone?
Ann is here.
Hello,
Hey,
Ann.
Go ahead, Ann.
Hi. And I just have to say thank you to Paul. I have served as a county chairman since 1970, and by far Paul has been the best.
Well, thank you, Ann.
It's hard to say that with having remembered Nancy Paul, but Paul has been great.
You really
Well,
have
you're too. Well, you're one of the greatest precinct chairs out there, but I'll say that too, Ann. Go ahead. What's your question?
Well, thanks. My question is about that ad that shows the children cowering under the desk, referring back to the Cuban crisis. Is that correct?
Isn't that awful?
And
Yeah.
I relate that to the fact that these children, because of your contributions from the NRA, these children are not. I think I'm getting it mixed up because I just didn't watch it too carefully. But I just was so taken with that ad talking about the Cuban crisis, children under the desk, etc. And John, how are you answering that?
Well, Ann, that's just another one of those. The ads are that simply, it always amazes me the depths to which the Democrats will go. As the chairman of the committee and that funds the Department of Justice, I am responsible for funding those school safety grants. I make sure that the Department of Justice has got a tremendous amount of money to send out to help harden our schools, to help local school districts protect those schools. We have a daughter at University of Texas. There's nothing more important to me as a parent, to any of us, than the safety of our children, and it's appalling to see Democrats stoop to such depths that they would actually run ads claiming that anyone would do anything to endanger our kids. It's just an awful. And you've done this for a number of years. Democrats, they just make it up. How'd you say it so well, Dan, a minute ago? They spend all their time telling us.
They try to spend all their time telling people what you believe instead of telling them what they believe.
That's exactly right.
The other thing they do, and this is a real big part of their message, is they attack intent. Right, so they try to convince you that the motivation of the Republican is inherently bad, and that's just such a terrible way to be. And like I want to be part of the solution when I get to Washington and say I will not attack the intent of my opponents. Right, I will dismantle their arguments in a logical and coherent way because they're not right. Because maybe they won't actually do the good that they're saying they're going to do. But we have to stop attacking each other's intent. And an ad like that does exactly that. And you know what else it does or doesn't do? It doesn't offer any actual solution. Right. Because in the solutions they talk about, they try to have it both ways. They say, well, we want to protect the Second Amendment. They'll give lip service to that, but then they'll run an ad like that, and you're like, well, okay, let's talk detail. Like, what do you actually want to do, and how will it work? And we actually have solutions, especially for school safety. I've been a longtime advocate of gun violence restraining orders, which is gaining a lot of prominence on the right, because it actually might fix the problem, right? And it takes it down to a local level, even a family level. Where like a normal restraining order works. If somebody's showing signs and threats, you can confiscate their weapons. The recent shooting we had in Pittsburgh, if you had a gun violence restraining order in place and that process was in place, in theory, a judge could have said, we're going to confiscate this person's weapons because they're on Twitter making threats.
Right, exactly.
And that's the right way to deal with these kind of things.
Common sense solution.
Yeah.
And you just put your finger on something there, Dan, as well. The judge being part of that. I've got to circle back to judges.
Yeah.
Again, this is Paul Simpson, County Chair. I'm here with Congressman John Culberson and congressional candidate Dan Crenshaw, particularly those of you who are new to the call, maybe just gotten on. If you've got any questions, press *3 and get your question in. Hopefully we can get to all of them today. Yeah, go ahead. I was going to talk about judges here for a second.
Well, I want to make a point, too, that this Democrat ad on the NRA and gun violence is particularly offensive, as Dan says, because it's attacking intent. And, in fact, I actually, with John Cornyn's help, we fixed the instant background check database. I did this quietly, didn't make a lot of noise about it like I always do. This was a bipartisan bill to ensure that someone with a restraining order, someone with a conviction, someone with a history of mental illness cannot get access to purchase a firearm. Existing law is adequate. We just need to enforce it, and that's what this legislation that I passed, the Fix NICS bill, did. It made sure that instant background check database will be accurate to keep guns out of the hands of people who shouldn't have them.
Right. And that's been so effective. And you're talking about a lot of the issues I think that our judges deal with as well. Again, we're talking with three branches of government. We have a governor, lieutenant governor, administrative positions to elect this year, members of Congress and the legislature. All Republicans should be reelected and elected, put in office like Dan Crenshaw, and you Congressmen be reelected. But we also have a slew of judges on the ballot, 75 judges on the ballot in Harris County, from the top to the bottom. And one of the great things I think our Republican judges have done, we've put together some information on all the programs they've done, really innovative stuff. So not just, to one hand, they enforce the law, keep the really bad criminals off the streets, and rather than the Democrats have been doing what the police have called the revolving door of justice, putting families at risk, putting neighborhoods at risk. But in contrast, Republicans will keep those really bad actors in jail where they belong to protect the rest of society. But there's an awful lot of folks caught up in the system that maybe can be rehabilitated, can be helped in many different ways. So one of the things the Republicans have done, Republican judges have actually, they donate their time to a lot of these programs that they've created to fight human trafficking, help women escape human trafficking situations, to assist veterans, particularly who've had some mental issues or some substance abuse issues that have led to some problems. They help the mentally ill in many ways get the help they need. There's been new programs created to help the mentally ill in Harris County that get caught up in the criminal justice system, and even help drunk drivers who have sort of an endemic problem, particularly early offenders. Let's get them rehabilitated. These aren't people that should go in jail. Let's prevent them from starting off on a life of crime. And there are a bunch of these programs, and our Republican judges have created. And again, they donate their time to do this. There's something called the Sober Court. There's something called the Care Court, the Star Court, Veterans Court, specifically designed
Drug court, especially to help young people.
To help young people, again, to help save women from the human trafficking problems, to help veterans, help the mentally ill. And these are not just about locking up the bad guys.
Right. That's important that you make that point, Paul. The congressman I'm replacing, Ted Poe, or I hope to replace, he's been an enormous advocate for the rights of sexual assault victims, human trafficking victims. He's one of the leading members of Congress. I really, that is one aspect of his legacy that I think needs to be maintained, and I will certainly be fighting for, because I just don't want that to go away. I think it's so important.
It's important to get our judges to make sure we can keep those programs going as well, because these are almost exclusively managed and run and handled by the Republican judges.
And they're all funded through my subcommittee. I chair that subcommittee, and I've
right.
made sure those. I've
Good.
got the funding for the Violence Against Women Act at a record level. I've got funding for the drug courts at a record level. I've got funding to fight human trafficking at a record level. Those grants all go through the Department of Justice. They all are in my subcommittee, and I'm the one that makes the decision. I made sure there's plenty of money there to help law enforcement at the local level.
We're all working all together. So let me move on to another question. I believe we had a question about the border wall. I'm sure a very popular topic. And Ryan, are you there on the line, Ryan? Hello?
Yes, sir.
Go ahead with your question, sir. Go ahead with your question.
Ryan, I think you might have.
Yeah, I was just curious if your stance on the if whether a border wall was necessary, or kind of if that's a little bit extreme.
Well, I can tell you from personal experience and touring the border many times, working with law enforcement on the border, Ryan, that the best way to secure the border is to follow the recommendations of the local sector chief on that border. For example, the needs of the Brownsville sector are different. The Rio Grande Valley sector are different from the Del Rio sector or the Presidio sector. A wall may make sense in parts of the far west, out in the flat desert of Arizona or New Mexico, but not make as much sense along the river in the lower Rio Grande Valley. So first of all, I've supported legislation and encouraged the White House to follow the recommendations of the local sector chief in each sector on the best way to secure that sector of the border. And that, again, is going to include many things. It's going to include technology. It's going to include drones. It's going to include, for example, on the river, weir dams to create, have big pools of water so animals can get down and farmers can get access to water, but also provide a barrier on the river. And in some other parts of the border, a wall makes sense, but not in all cases. Let's follow the recommendations of the sector chief in each sector.
Dan, you have any thoughts on a border wall?
I would largely echo what Congressman Culberson said. Is the answer I usually give is it's a wall where that makes sense, and it's other security solutions where that makes sense. Whether it's technology, whether it's drone technology, whether it's sensor technology, maybe it's more Border Patrol agents, maybe it's additional patrolling along the river itself. Because like we said, we have different issues in Texas than the rest of the western states, but we do need border security, and it does need to be funded. It's going to be a huge priority for me.
And Paul, I want to be sure while we're online with everybody to point out that they can go to harrisvotes.org, is it, to see where their early voting location, voting in
I
person.
prefer to send them to harriscountygop.com.
Harris
actually.
County
There are
GOP.
links on our website.
So tell me again, let's tell everybody how.
Sure.
How do they find out where they can go vote early in person?
Absolutely. If you haven't, you can vote from 7 to 7 the rest of this week through Friday, every day. There are 46 early voting locations around Harris County, so it's convenient. And be clear, when you're early voting, you can vote at any one of those locations.
For any reason.
And for any reason.
I mean, you don't have to, just you want to vote early?
You go, exactly.
Let's go.
Exactly. Election day, you have to vote at your assigned precinct. That's on November 6th. So on this week, 46 locations, you can go to harriscountygop.com, the party website, and we have links there to send you to maps and other places that you can find where those locations are if you need. harriscountygop.com. I should mention, and by the way, while we're talking about this, Callers, if you have any questions, press *3 for me, Paul Simpson, or our guest here today, Dan Crenshaw. I believe Congressman Culberson may have to leave shortly.
I do in just a minute or two.
Unfortunately, he's got another engagement. But so if you got a question for him, call in maybe, and we'll see if we can get it done. If not, maybe Dan can handle it. But again, the early voting locations are all over the county, 46 of them. And if you want information on the judges, by the way, anybody can go to republicanjudges.com. Real easy to remember.
But if Republicans turn out in this election, we will win countywide.
Absolutely.
And it is critical for each and every one of you listening to this call today. We mainly want to drive home the point, how important it is you get out and vote early. Email your friends, your neighbors, your colleagues, everyone you know at synagogue, at church, to turn out and vote Republican and come out and vote early. And I hope to earn your vote for re-election in District 7, as Dan hopes to earn your vote for the congressman from District 2. We need every Republican voting. People who don't vote, you're voting for Nancy Pelosi to be Speaker.
That's just a horrendous thought.
Can't even
I don't even
imagine.
think Democrats want that. not from Texas, anyway.
Do you need to go, Congressman?
I'm going to have to slip out. But Paul,
Unfortunately,
thank you for
Congressman
doing
Culberson's
this.
going to step away, but Dan Crenshaw is going to stay on, and I'm Paul Simpson, County Chair, and with congressional candidate Dan Crenshaw. We'll stay on, and thank you, John Culberson, for being
Enjoyed
here.
it. Thank you. Thanks for
All right.
doing this.
So,
Look forward to seeing you soon.
Congressman
Thank you.
Culberson is going to step away, but I think we've got a question for Dan Crenshaw from Kurt, if he can come on the line. And
I'm here.
okay, go ahead with your question, Kurt.
All right, Mr. Crenshaw, well, let me say, I just got back from voting. I've already done a straight ticket, so you guys are
Thank you.
on the list. But I just wanted to know, because all the talk of immigration and everything, it just seems like our veterans, and thank you for your service, by the way, I just feel that they're kind of taking the back seat to everything that's going on. And I'm a Marine veteran, but I have a lot of buddies that I served with, obviously, and all that. And you know, with the suicides going on, and the care is not where it should be. And I know, as a veteran yourself, that you are totally backing this, but I'm wondering, what can you do to make this more open?
Yeah, are you referring to the issue of veteran suicide specifically?
Well, not specifically, just care, because the VA is not doing what it should do, I think.
Yeah, I mean, you know,
I'm getting from all the people I talk with.
Right. I mean, I go to the VA for my care. The reality is you've been to one VA, you've been to one VA. I've been to multiple VAs. Some have much better care than others. You know, we need to be holding our administrators at each VA accountable. Right now, it's extremely hard to hire and fire people like you would a normal business if they're not performing well. There's also too much bureaucracy placed on. I could tell you stories of when I've walked into an appointment at the VA, and the well-meaning doctor is trying to help, but they just can't because of certain rules placed upon them that are just really don't make any sense. And you know, so you know, how can we fix that? And that's administrative fix. That's not necessarily that's not necessarily legislative from Congress. You know, we need to help our veterans find purpose. When you talk about the suicide rate, I think that speaks to a larger sense of lack of purpose amongst our veteran community, and getting our veterans a new mission is something I talk about a lot. And you know, and that comes from the veteran community itself. And there's so many great groups out there that are working towards this goal. But in some cases, there's almost too many groups. So veterans maybe don't know where to turn and find these resources. But you know, in Houston, we have something called Combined Arms. It's a nonprofit that exists just to house other veteran nonprofits. I think it's a really great way to say, okay, hey, here's your one-stop shop for veterans. Okay, this is where you go if you're looking for a job. This is an organization that helps you do that. If you're looking for mental health care, this is an organization that does that. The beauty of America is our ability to come together with civic institutions and nonprofits and charities and help each other in that way. That's what allows us to have limited government, by the way, if you compare us with other Western European countries. And it's really uniquely American. It's an element of American exceptionalism that is great. But we actually have to walk through that door, and as veterans, we have to walk through it. So I'll always be looking for ways to give veterans more choice in our health care. You know, we need to keep the VA around. I'm not for totally privatizing the VA. I think especially a lot of our more senior citizens or senior veterans need the VA as a place to go if they feel welcome at. And we need to improve the efficiency of care. I think that's the biggest problem I see when I personally go there.
Well, thank you, Dan. And thanks for the question there as well, Bert. Again, this is Paul Simpson, County Chair, and I'm here with congressional candidate Dan Crenshaw. Congressman Culberson had to head off to an event, prior commitment, but we certainly appreciate all he's done, and I know there'll be an effort to answer questions later if y'all leave them behind. If you have any questions for me or for Dan Crenshaw, press *3 on your phone. We're talking about the election now here in Harris County and early voting going on. I'll mention a little bit, too, that everybody's heard the turnout has been tremendous. It really is for a midterm year, and we see a lot of Republicans turning out. And I'm not just blowing smoke. Republicans are turning out in huge numbers. I think our side is very fired up. I know the radio station told me the other day when they asked the Democrats, they interviewed both of us about the early voting. They said, well, the Democrats said they didn't want to look at the numbers. So that always tells you something.
Yeah.
Now, but you can't get, things can change overnight. So Saturday was very unusual. The biggest turnouts, I think, ever on a Saturday in early voting. So it's very unpredictable, but the turnout is big. So get out. And again, it's early. It's easy to vote early. It's 46 locations around the county, and you can find those at harriscountygop.com. We've got links to get your voting locations, and on your election day as well, you can find your election day location if you want to wait until November 6th, which some folks do want to do.
And your vote really counts in elections like these. I mean, county-wide, some of these judges' races could be decided by 100 votes. Maybe
they can be extremely close, Dan. That's a good point. And, folks, there's 75 judges on the ballot this year. Oftentimes people ask about the district. Are they in the particular district a given judge is in? And so the way it works, we've got statewide judges like on the Supreme Court and Court of Criminal Appeals. We have appellate judges who cover 10 counties, but all the district judges and the county judges are in all of Harris County. The district is Harris County. So the district is just a number on their court. But in Harris County, the district judges are all elected countywide. So there's 75 total judges. Again, the easy way to do is vote straight ticket. But if you want to consider the Republican judicial candidates, again, they're overwhelmingly endorsed by law enforcement organizations like the Police Officers Union, the Fraternal Order of Police, the Harris County Deputy Association. Also overwhelmingly supported by business associations like the C Club and Houston Realty Business Coalition, which have almost solely endorsed Republicans with a few exceptions, and they know very well that the Republicans are important on the civil side of things, enforcing the law, making sure that they're enforcing the law as written, and they're not legislating from the bench. And even interestingly, 84% of the races in Harris County, the Houston Bar Association, respondents preferred Republican judges. So overwhelmingly, the Republican judges are the support of those who are affiliated, who deal with the law and work with the law and want to keep us safe. Any other? Let's see if we have any other questions. Dan, here's an interesting one. Since you're coming up to likely your first term in Congress, I think Andrew has a question, and then we may have to close it out after this. So go ahead. Is Andrew on the line?
Hey, Paul, I'm here. Hey,
Good.
Dan, how are you doing?
Andrew, how are you?
I just want to start off by saying, Dan, I appreciate what you've done for our country. I'm one of the volunteers on your campaign.
There you go.
And me and
Well,
my
thank
wife
you for that.
We voted for you, and we're out working the polls early for you.
Thank you.
I really wanted to get both of you guys your perspective on this, but what do we do about term limits in Congress with an ever-changing population? I know viewpoints have changed over the years with what's going on in society, but how do we change that if we still have the viewpoints of guys that have been in Congress for the past 40, 50 years? What do we do about that?
Yeah, term limits is an interesting question. I'm in favor of term limits, but there are pros and cons to it that have to be addressed. Like I said, I'm definitely in favor of it. The majority of Americans are. I mean, I think it's 90%. I mean, it's a very high number, and so that would require constitutional change, and so that's what we should be pushing for. I would also encourage everyone to get out and vote, because I mean the biggest term limiter is a vote, right? And we should be able to vote people out. But the short answer to your question is, I am in favor of term limits, and then the fight will become, how many years is really the right number of years. If you're looking at House, if you're looking at Senate, we need to figure that out and have a reasonable discussion about it.
Yeah, as Dan said, that has to be, at least in Congress, it's got to be a change of the U.S. Constitution. And years ago in the 90s, the Republican Congress tried to impose term limits, and the Supreme Court threw it out, said they didn't have the right to do it. So getting Congress to pass that congressional term limit is going to be a challenge, but it would have to be done through constitutional change. So I think we need to go ahead and wrap it up. Dan, if you've got any closing comments about your race, please give them to our listeners. Sure, they'd love to hear it.
Sure. We've run a race unlike any other. We're trying to give the Republican Party a future. I mean, that if I had one legacy that I wanted to live on, it would be that. I want to give the Republican Party a future. We have the right values. We have the right approach to government. And we have a sustainable approach to government. Every offer you hear from the Democrats, it's generally completely unsustainable. Maybe it's more Medicare spending here. Maybe it's more spending on this. It feels good in the short term. It hurts us in the long term. I want policies in place that will last for 100 years. And, that's my pitch to young people, too. We campaign a lot to the millennial generation because, that's my generation. We talk about the hard questions and how to put our spending on a sustainable footing. It's something we can all agree on as millennials. And you know what? I just came from Rice University, actually, right before here. Again, talking to college students. We make the rounds. We go to high schools. We talk to students there. And that's so important. It's something Republicans have ignored for far too long, and I'm not going to be that candidate. I'm not going to be that congressman. We're going to talk to everybody. We're going to represent everybody, and we're going to do the right thing. So please get out and vote. Remember, this Friday is the last day of early voting, 7 p.m., and then it's Election Day. But I think it's much easier to vote early. So
Absolutely.
Get out there and vote.
Well, Dan, thank you so much, and I'm looking forward to you being my congressman.
Thanks, Paul.
This come January, but we've got a huge county here, folks. We need everybody to turn out to vote. We need Republicans to turn out to vote in huge numbers because I don't think this blue wave is happening, but the only way we're going to win it in Harris County is getting out working and voting. So we're going to remind you, go to HarrisCountyGOP.com for information on all of our candidates, RepublicanJudges.com for information on all our judicial candidates, and please volunteer. If you're interested and you've already voted and you've got some time, we need help. We need help talking to voters. One of the biggest challenges is everybody hears about the national races and the statewide races, and they forget how important these countywide races are. We've got a County Judge Ed Emmett up for re-election, a very critically important election, and all the judges above and below him on the ballot. And so for those few folks who don't want to vote straight ticket, we need to make sure it's important that they understand how important it is to vote for all of our judicial candidates down the ballot all the way. So it's and we need help getting that message out to voters. So go to HarrisCountyGOP.com to volunteer. You work the polls, call voters, do all kinds of things, and it makes a difference. Reaching out, there's nothing like talking to a voter directly that'll make to have an impact on them and get them to be sure to go vote. So thank everybody for participating in this Tele-Town Hall. We'll be wrapping this up, and we look forward to celebrating with you with victory on November 6th. Thank you so much.
Thank you.